Welcome to the second Alternatives Public Workshop for the Southwest 10th Street Connector Project Development and Environment, or PD&E study. This project is being conducted by the Florida Department of Transportation under Financial Management Number 439891-1-22-02. The Southwest 10th Street Connector study is located between Florida's Turnpike and I-95. There are two adjacent studies that include I-95 from Southwest 10th Street to Hillsborough Boulevard and the Sawgrass Expressway and Turnpike interchange. The Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, formed a Community Oversight Advisory Team, or COAT, to provide recommendations for the project study area. Recommendations such as safety, improved operations, and environmental considerations have been incorporated into the project's purpose and needs statement, and all recommendations are being fully evaluated during the study. The purpose and need for the Southwest 10th Street Connector is comprehensive and includes many of the COAT's recommendations. Providing a limited access managed lane connector facility along the corridor between the Sawgrass Expressway and I-95 will improve system connectivity between Strategic Intermodal System, or SIS, facilities. I-95, Florida's Turnpike, and Southwest 10th Street are all SIS facilities. SIS facilities are those that are critical to statewide mobility and economic development. Local transportation needs for Southwest 10th Street will be addressed, including the application of complete streets concepts. Safety and operational issues will also be addressed along the corridor and will improve emergency response and evacuation times, since I-95, Southwest 10th Street, and Florida's Turnpike are all designated evacuation routes. This project will also encourage intermodal relationships and economic development for the area. Next is a short video about the Southwest 10th Street Connector.
I've lived in Deerfield Beach for 15 years.
Feels like nice Florida. Great beaches, great food, great atmosphere.
It's easy to get to Miami, it's easy to get to West Palm Beach.
Everything we could think of is located conveniently within the city.
We love it here, and we wouldn't consider living anywhere else. But the traffic on Southwest 10th Street has always been a bit of a challenge, and more recently we've noticed more traffic in non-peak hours.
85% of the traffic on 10th is passing through traffic. It's just commuters. It's people trying to get from one highway to another highway that has a missing link.
The current traffic on Southwest 10th Street is significantly congested, and there are backups and severe delays that cause first responders to have elongated response times for any incidents that occur out on that corridor.
I think what's important to realize is that we have traffic issues today. The goal with Southwest 10th Street is to improve the connection to I-95, as well as provide a regional connection through a managed lane system to the Turnpike and the Sawgrass. In addition to those improvements, we will provide a new complete street local facility, which will provide bicycle, pedestrian, as well as vehicular mobility.
Improvements to the corridor would allow us to actively monitor the roadway to be able to communicate with first responders and to let them know what it is needed, and we can send the proper resources out to mitigate incidents that occur.
By providing the managed lane system, we are significantly reducing the number of vehicles using the local Southwest 10th Street, which will reduce the travel time for those who are using the local facility, provide you a quicker time to get to your home and or business that you're visiting.
If we want to keep growing and sustain that growth, we need to plan down the road and allow for this growth to happen.
The connector will help our area as well in the fact that now people won't avoid 10th Street for fear of the traffic.
The end result will better my commute and better my experience with the road.
10th Street will now be a connector that people can get on and go to our local businesses and actually not have to worry about being stuck in traffic.
Helping the local neighborhood and local residents, that is something to be excited about.
It's a great opportunity for us to take advantage of working with our partners to solve our congestion problems today and into the future.
The Southwest 10th Street corridor represents a gap in the regional managed lanes network. This corridor is an important SIS link between the Turnpike and I-95. The Turnpike and I-95 are the backbones to the north-south movement for people and goods throughout the state of Florida. Implementation of a managed lanes connector roadway, along with an improved local roadway for Southwest 10th Street, addresses COAT recommendations and will complete the regional network and promote mobility and economic vitality of the area. An improved local Southwest 10th Street will retain access to communities and businesses. Complete Streets elements will be incorporated in the design of the local roadway, including bicycle and pedestrian features, a lower speed, and landscape aesthetics features. Both the Southwest 10th Street and I-95 corridors experience heavy congestion, which contributes to a higher than normal crash rate, as well as delayed emergency response times. The overall transportation project development process is shown here. We're in the PD&E phase shown in the second tier. In the PD&E phase, engineering design alternatives are being developed. Community outreach and agency coordination are occurring along with evaluations of environmental and community impacts. At the end of the PD&E process, the FDOT will recommend a preferred alternative. The PD&E process follows several steps. We're currently conducting the engineering and environmental analyses, holding the alternatives public workshop, and preparing draft documents. During the engineering analyses, alternatives are developed to meet the purpose and need of the project. Potential impacts to the corridor's social, natural, and physical environments are being studied and documented. A continuous community outreach process is integrated into every step of the process to ensure that residents, businesses, and other stakeholders have opportunities for participation and meaningful input throughout the PD&E study. All design alternatives have been developed and refined throughout the study process to meet the project's purpose and need and avoid or minimize impacts to the community, natural, and physical environments while incorporating as many COAT recommendations as possible. The alternatives are being compared to each other in an evaluation matrix using common criteria such as community and environmental impacts, traffic operations, and others to determine which alternative has the least impacts overall while providing the most long-term benefits for the stakeholders. As part of any PD&E study, a no-build alternative is always carried forward and included in the matrix. The matrix is included in the project exhibits. The team is evaluating 2 facilities within the Southwest 10th Street corridor. One will be a managed lane facility to provide a connection between the Turnpike, Sawgrass Expressway, and I-95. Concepts will be evaluated with different entrance and exit ramp locations between Powerline Road and Military Trail for access to and from the managed lanes and local Southwest 10th Street. The extent of the below-grade section is being evaluated for the managed lane facility and will continue to be developed as the study progresses. The other facility will be a local, lower-speed roadway to serve businesses and communities within the corridor. Bicycle lanes, sidewalks, and other community elements will be included. In April of this year, the first Alternatives Public Workshop was held. A center alignment and a north alignment were presented. The center alignment presented in April is shown here. The managed lanes are in the center, with the local Southwest 10th Street on either side as a frontage road. This is the north alignment, which places the managed lanes in the north side of the corridor and the local lanes in the south. Based on feedback from the April Alternatives Public Workshop, community and stakeholder meetings, the north alignment was favored. Based on feedback from the previous Alternatives Public Workshop, other alternatives are being evaluated. In particular, a series of partial depressed options, which reduce the length of the below-grade section, are being examined, as well as a non-depressed option. The full depressed alternative has unique concerns, including construction impacts, drainage issues, and fiscal considerations. With a depressed or below-grade section, there are potential impacts at Powerline Road due to construction requirements. Extensive utility impacts and extended and complicated construction, including dewatering and ground acres, are required with this option. The limits of the fully depressed option would have an impact to Quiet Waters Park, while pump stations would be necessary for any depressed options. Noise barriers would also be warranted for a depressed section. With the partial depressed section, the managed lanes are depressed from west of the C2 Canal to east of Powerline Road. There would be no business relocations anticipated at Powerline Road, and utility impacts are reduced. The construction duration and number of pump stations are reduced compared to a full depressed section. There would be no impacts to Quiet Waters Park, and noise barriers would be warranted. With the non-depressed section, the managed lanes are at the same level as the local Southwest 10th Street lanes, and there would be no business relocations anticipated at Powerline Road. This alternative has the shortest construction duration as well as the least utility impacts compared to the depressed alternatives. Also, there would be no impacts to Quiet Waters Park, but noise barriers would still be warranted. Features of the local lanes for Southwest 10th Street include two 11-foot lanes in each direction, separated by a median. 7-foot buffered bicycle lanes will be included, as well as a sidewalk on the south side of the roadway. This local roadway will be physically separated from the managed lanes. Features of the managed lanes include two 12-foot lanes in each direction, separated by a median barrier wall. 12-foot shoulders will be provided. The managed lane system will be physically separated from the local Southwest 10th Street roadway. Limits of the below-grade section, as well as entrance and exit ramps to the facility, continue to be evaluated. Per state policy, no trucks over 2 axles will be allowed to use the managed lanes facility. 3 options are presented today: a depressed alternative, a partial depressed alternative, and a non-depressed or at-grade alternative. As with all PD&E studies, FDOT will consider the no-build alternative throughout the PD&E study. With the no-build alternative, no improvements will be made to local Southwest 10th Street and no managed lanes will be constructed. While this alternative requires no expenditure of roadway funds, requires no right-of-way, and has no construction impacts, the no-build alternative will allow traffic conditions to worsen, increasing congestion, time delay, emergency response times, and fuel consumption. Noise levels will increase and air quality will decrease. Next, let's compare the operations of the build and no-build alternatives. Today's traffic and congestion is shown in the top graphic, which indicates local congestion but predictable delay. If no improvements are made, congestion will continue to increase as illustrated in the 2040 no-build alternative, which shows widespread congestion and unpredictable delay. The 2040 build alternative graphic illustrates the congestion levels for the managed lanes and the local lanes as forecasted to the year 2040. Note that this final graphic separates the local and managed lanes as designed in the build alternatives and operates with predictable but reliable travel times along the corridor. To expand on this discussion, this graph shows the Southwest 10th Street travel time in the eastbound direction from the Turnpike to I-95 during the morning rush hour. Currently, it takes 12 to 14 minutes to travel this distance. If no improvements to the corridor are made, travel time increases to 16 to 17 minutes in the year 2040. If the Southwest 10th Street corridor improvements are implemented, the travel time savings are projected to be up to 13 minutes in the managed lanes. This is a similar graphic to the previous slide showing the westbound travel time during afternoon rush hour. Currently, it takes 12 to 14 minutes to travel this distance. If no improvements to the corridor are made, travel time increases to 17 to 18 minutes in the year 2040. If the Southwest 10th Street corridor improvements are implemented, the travel time savings are projected to be up to 14 minutes in the managed lanes. In terms of traffic congestion, the 2040 build alternative provides significantly better traffic operations than the no-build alternative. By removing through traffic from local Southwest 10th Street and offering motorists a managed lane choice, east and west travel times are reduced. A significant improvement is the 40% reduction in intersection delay, as 40% of all traffic will be in the managed lanes. These improvements also result in reduced emergency response times. This rendering depicts the full depressed option for the managed lanes and is looking towards the west. The next 5 slides show renderings of the different options presented today. Details are available in the display room and staff are available to answer questions. This rendering is looking towards the west and depicts the partial depressed option for the managed lanes with the westbound exit ramp depressed. This rendering is looking towards the west and depicts the partial depressed option for the managed lanes with the eastbound managed lanes depressed. This rendering is looking towards the west and depicts the partial depressed option for the managed lanes. This rendering is looking towards the west and shows the non-depressed alternative with no ramps to or from the managed lanes. The north alignment features an elevated section carrying the managed lanes over Military Trail and a ramp conveying eastbound traffic exiting to local Southwest 10th Street. This configuration is necessary due to the proximity of the railroad tracks, which Southwest 10th Street must go over as it exists today. Currently being evaluated are the locations of the entrance and exit ramps to and from the managed lanes to local Southwest 10th Street. An eastbound entrance is planned for east of Powerline Road and an eastbound exit east of Military Trail. A westbound entrance is planned for east of Military Trail and an exit ramp west of Military Trail. For the Southwest 10th Street connector improvements, each build alternative is evaluating the natural, physical, cultural, and social environments with a goal to avoid or minimize impacts to these resources. No wetland impacts and only minor impacts to surface waters are anticipated. No adverse effects to endangered or threatened species are anticipated. A bald eagle nest is located in the Turnpike interchange area, although no adverse effects are anticipated. Results of the environmental analyses have been documented in the Natural Resource Evaluation. A sociocultural effects evaluation is ongoing, and a cultural resource assessment survey has been prepared to evaluate the effects to historic and archaeological resources. Preliminary evaluation indicates no adverse effects. There are 2 resources protected under Section 4F of the U.S. Department of Transportation Act, Crystal Heights Park North and Quiet Waters Park. No permanent impacts to these parks are anticipated, but temporary impacts may occur depending on the alternative chosen. Coordination is ongoing with Deerfield Beach and Broward County regarding the park resources. Multimodal accommodations are being incorporated into the project improvements, which include sidewalks, bicycle lanes, and the encouragement of transit routes. A contamination screening evaluation has taken place. 23 contamination sites have been identified, however, no significant impacts are anticipated. A contamination screening report has been prepared, and an air quality screening is also being prepared. These are some comparative noise levels to associate decibel levels with everyday sounds. Noise impacts are considered at or above 66 decibels. Perception of noise is related to the speed and volume of vehicles, as well as the type of traffic. For instance, 2,000 vehicles per hour sounds twice as loud as 200 vehicles per hour. Traffic traveling at 65 miles an hour sounds twice as loud as traffic traveling 30 miles an hour. Noise is a key concern for the communities surrounding the corridor. Noise levels have been measured at various locations along the corridor, and an analysis is ongoing for each of the concepts. Noise walls, if required, will be closely coordinated with affected stakeholders. Potential noise barrier locations have been identified and are shown in this slide in blue. These locations need to be further analyzed, and the limits shown are preliminary. These preliminary results are viable with an at-grade or depressed roadway alternative. Noise barrier recommendations will be made after additional coordination to determine support from benefited properties. Water supply wells for the city of Deerfield Beach are located within the corridor. In order to assess the impacts of a proposed depressed section on the Wellfields, groundwater modeling is being performed. As you can see from this graphic, the wellfield protection zones extend into the project areas and are a very important consideration. The FDOT has planned and funded 2 future landscape projects to address landscape and aesthetic elements along the corridor for installation after construction of the roadway improvements. As the PD&E alternatives are developed, landscape design concepts will be developed and coordinated with the city. As we move forward, alternatives will continue to be developed and refined. Public outreach is continuous throughout the study, and interested groups are encouraged to contact the project team, who are available for group meetings. The team looks forward to meaningful stakeholder engagement and welcomes all input. The workshop today represents an additional opportunity for you to provide your input and feedback to the team on the engineering concepts being developed. The public hearing, anticipated in the spring of 2019, is another meeting where you can provide your comments. Please tell us what you think by submitting a comment on the project website, which is www.sw10street.com, filling out a comment card, or giving your statement to the court reporter here tonight. Your opinion is important. For additional information, please contact the FDOT Project Manager, Robert Bastian, at the phone number or email on the slide. The project website shown here is another method to submit your comments, get project information, or contact the project team. Please visit the display room across the hall where you can talk with project staff and examine the concepts up close. This concludes our presentation, and we thank you for attending this Alternatives Public Workshop.